Mark, I'd like to move into what it was like when you started your new position at Leicestershire, and what it was like that first few days, first few weeks. I mean, you said you started in June, so it only has been a few months, and you actually started in COVID as well, so it's quite a challenging time as it is anyway. And you also mentioned that you obviously worked for the big word, so you already were introduced to interpreters in some ways. But now in your new position, what it was like um, to start working with interpreters, and this is what I would like to move into. What were your first contacts within the profession, within the interpreting profession or translation profession?
Okay, yeah, it was frustrating at first. When I left the big word, I didn't take any contacts with me. I had total integrity, so I didn't take any contacts at all. And I'd met lots of wonderful interpreters while I was at the big word, worked with them, engaged with them, been to events. I met you in probably November last year, but didn't have any of your contact details. So when I started the new job, I could remember some email addresses for some of the cops that I needed to get in touch with. So I did that. But with interpreters, I think I did have, you and I had personal contact for work, I think. So I had your details. So I got back in touch with you. And some of the other interpreters that I'd worked with in the early days, who I'd kept in touch with, I was able to get back in touch with them. I think you know one of the ladies that I worked with, Simona. Well, I got back in touch with her because what I've always wanted to do is get that personal interaction with interpreters, individual interpreters, to find out how you're doing, thank you for what you're doing, and get your views. Because as you know, we're later going to talk about our police framework, and I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for interpreters as well as the right thing for police. So as I said, it was frustrating at first, but it was absolutely great to walk back into police buildings. You're right, it was COVID at the first time that I started, and it still is. But I was able to go to meetings and meet new people. While I was at the big word, I only dealt with a set number of police services who were all contacts and clients of the big word. Suddenly, on the 1st of June, I had every police service in the country to make contact with. So I have every force now. So that was a nice change. And I've loved it. I've loved every day is busy. Every day I'm meeting with people or writing to people, setting strategies and trying to do what's right for the police service, but also for the interpreters. Does that answer your question?
Did interpreters get in touch with you, or did you try to get in touch with the interpreting world?
Yeah, I sent a message to every agency. I sent a message to every organisation like yours, and you'd started the AIT, so that's why I got in touch with you, and also for a personal relationship with working with each other as well. But there were other interpreters that started getting in touch with me, mainly through people like yourselves and Mike Orlov from NERPC, who I'd obviously had dealings with. And I think you're probably going to ask me some questions about the AIT events and things like that, so I don't want to cut across those, but it was due to those events and those very kind invites that allowed me to reach so many more people, just like we're doing now as well.
Well, actually, we had your first event on the 1st of July. So that's only been a month. If you
Yeah.
started on the 1st of June,
Yeah.
that you've been in the position for about a month. So that's quite a, I would say, quick introduction. You've only been a few weeks in the role, and straight away you've been introduced to a large community of interpreters, because your event was extremely popular and we had over 200 people attending. And what was it like for you to be exposed to a large community of interpreters live on a live event online? What was your experience on that event?
It was quite intimidating because I knew that there were going to be some difficult questions. I love speaking. Anyone who's ever seen me knows I'm quite happy standing up in front of a large audience, hundreds of people. I have no problem with that. And it's always important that if you're going to talk about something, you know your subject. So even though I'd only been in the role a month, I'd been working with the police and the agencies for those 2 years, and I'd been doing police work for 30 years. So I was comfortable with that. You were so quick to get in touch and want to do an event, and I'm grateful for that, because you were the person that gave me the opportunity to talk to over 200 people. Not talk at. I felt uncomfortable because we were doing it on Zoom, and I'm used to walking around the stage and walking around tables and interacting personally. And although I could see some people on the cameras, it's still not as personal as I like, but that was a learning curve for me. What was it like? I said it was intimidating. On the whole, it was fantastic. The response that we got was great. We were talking about things that some interpreters don't like, some interpreters don't want to see happening, and I get that. But it's necessary, and I was grateful that you gave me that platform to do that talking. There were some interesting comments that came back. There were some hurtful comments that came back about, I've no idea what I'm talking about. How can we ever trust this man because he's used one wrong phrase? If you and I sit and talk about police work, you'll use a phrase that may not be quite correct. I wouldn't be so rude as to pick you up on it and think that I can't trust you. So I had a little bit of soul searching. Some of the comments were absolutely correct, and I changed as a result of that. Now, you talked to me about not calling people linguists, talking about translators and interpreters, etc. And that helped, but I still made a few mistakes. I've learned from it. And one of the things I've learned is I don't really want those chats going along while I'm talking. I found that distracting.
So was it helpful, do you believe, that presentation, that exposure to interpreters, although it could be sometimes perhaps, some of the comments were unfriendly, maybe some were even rude, but did you find that was helpful for you in the role that you're doing?
Most definitely. What you gave me is an opportunity to hear comments from people. Now, there will be some comments that I can't do anything about, and there will be comments like agencies always send underqualified interpreters, etc., and I'm asking for evidence. But lots of evidence came to me, lots of information that I would never have been able to pick up otherwise, from all kinds of interpreters, different languages, different roles, so translators as well, and we'll talk about BSL, I guess, but we picked up quite a few BSL interpreters that had things to say. It was really useful. I would never have got that information in a year if it had been done any other way. And you also opened other doors for me with other organisations that they got in touch through you. So it was really useful, yeah.
You gave 2 other presentations after that one, because British Sign Language interpreters who attended the first event immediately got in touch, and they felt that it was quite important that British Sign Language interpreters and lip speakers are also covered, and they had lots of questions for you. You actually gave 2 exclusive presentations to British Sign Language interpreters community, and what was that experience like for you?
That was humbling, and I have talked about this before, and we talked privately about it. I'd never seen any signing done other than whoever's doing it next to Boris or whoever it is, Nicola Sturgeon on the news. And I've worked with conference interpreters, and I've always been immensely amazed at how they can pick up on everything I'm saying and continue to speak as well as listen. It was fantastic. But these people really humbled me. It was really a very emotional thing to watch 2 interpreters that were signing absolutely everything that I said. I found it distracting at first because I'd never seen it before for me, and there were a few signs for words that I gave that I started looking. It also taught me something. I'd heard the comments before about it's hard work and you need 2 interpreters, and I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't understand it. My goodness me, I do now. Now I know that spoken interpreters work really hard, need breaks, and if we could afford 2 at the same time, that would be great. But I really saw how hard those BSL interpreters worked. I remember at one point there was a question asked, and I said, I don't know why you're asking that question, because I'd already answered it. And maybe I was getting a little bit frustrated, but I watched the interpreter mimic my face and bring out my expressions. I thought it was fantastic, and I'll stop now, but I could talk about this for hours. It was amazing.
Thank you. Mark, I know you already touched on this, the fact that sometimes even though you've got tremendous experience on both sides, you had amazing career and very long career in the police, but you also worked for the agency for a couple of years, so you had that experience and that knowledge, and yet you felt, as you said to me earlier today, that some terminology you happen to be still quite unfamiliar. The difference between sometimes the British Sign Language interpreters call themselves LSPs, whereas in your world,
Yeah.
LSP is something else, and many other things that you've picked up on. And you did say that was really, really helpful. But was it what you expected? You've been exposed to these 3 very large events. So a great community of interpreters, public service interpreters, British Sign Language interpreters. Were there any learning points? And was it what you expected initially when you agreed to give talks at those events?
I don't think I had expectations other than the experience I'd already had with your members. I had a couple of shocks. At one point, there were comments that the BSL community, interpreting community, are much higher trained and spoken, which I thought was strange, because you personally have a DPI, Diploma in Police Interpreting. You've done police training within your degree. And I thought that was strange that they were saying that they are much higher qualified. So we need to unpack that a bit more in slow time, because they don't do police training in general. There are people out there that are putting together some fantastic training courses. So I didn't have expectations. There were some very hurtful comments, but I know I can't please all the people all the time. I can only please some of the people some of the time. Whatever message I'm giving, it's difficult, because there'll always be people out there that don't like the message. And if it's a police-related message, this is what we are going to do, then I try to do it in as polite a way as possible, but it's going to happen whether people like it or not. And I don't want that to sound like a dictatorship. It's not the case. But there are always unpalatable messages, and I get that. And then I try to be as honest as I can, and then I get messages that I'm talking down to people, I'm condescending. It's a bit like family life. I'm never going to win. So I just do the best I can.
Mark, I know you mentioned the word members. Those people who attended your event on the 1st of July, not all of them are members of AIT. I'm just letting you know that we've opened this event to everybody. There were interpreters from various associations and organizations that are coming. So not all of them are members. I'd like them all to be members of AIT, but just I thought I'd clarify. But despite, you mentioned challenges that, you obviously faced during those events, did you still feel that you could make a change and you could make a positive change for interpreters?
Most definitely. Otherwise, I would have resigned. I'm not going to do a job that's a waste of time just for the money. It's important that we continue this journey that we're on, to make sure that the interpreters who do police work, and I talking about translators as well, and the non-spoken, it's important that they are known to be at the top of their game. We can't do our work in the police without them. So I've got to keep moving forward. I want to keep moving forward. I honestly believe that what we are doing is the right thing to do. We've got all sorts of challenges that I'm sure you're going to ask me questions about soon. I'm trying to navigate my way through the difficult points between the police arena and the interpreting, translating arena, and I'm trying to find the right solutions to ensure that the police continue to get the very best qualified, experienced and vetted interpreters.
So even though the experience initial introduction to interpreting world was quite challenging, as you mentioned, you still feel that you can make a change that would work for everyone?
Not everyone. It's not going to be everyone. There are people in all walks of life who honestly believe that there's only one way of doing things, and that's their way. What I'm trying to do is find something that suits as near as possible everyone's needs. I was a negotiator. We're going to negotiate between us to find a solution that works, that's better for interpreters and still meets the needs of the police. And I'm increasing that standard for the police so we don't get lower or unqualified interpreters attending police stations, going to witnesses' house, because we may lose cases as a result of it. And I can't have that, because the bad guy gets away, or even worse, a good guy goes to prison.